All right, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to one of our October 2025 Hot Topic calls. It's always great to see people live and in the room and also virtually. I know it's a busy time of year, so many of you are not with us, but hi, Liz. Welcome to you. Good to have you here. You can feel free to leave your camera on or camera off, but I'm Jennifer Britton, and we're talking today coaching for strengths from fixing to flourishing. And really wanted to sort of subtitle this Unlocking Potential through a focus on what's best. Whether you're working one on one with groups or with teams, I personally have been a strengths advocate for more than 21 years. In fact, I first saw Tom Rath, who was co creator of Clifton Strengths, speak back in probably 2002, 2003 when I was a leader with the United Nations, even before starting Potentials Realized. And I was really intrigued and captivated by this notion of what if we could actually help people do their best work rather than try to fix what is not always best. As some of you know, I started off my career in cognitive psychology. I have an undergrad, a BSc in psych from McGill. I was there in the late 80s, early 90s. And at that time, we were really in an era of behavioral modification. In fact, in my last year of undergrad, I worked once a week out at the Montreal Neurological Hospital, and I worked with autistic children. The experience I had with that really turned me off psychology so much that I pivoted my career and went into environmental education as a master's. And what's interesting though is I think if positive psych and sort of strengths-based psychology had been around in the early 1990s, it would have been a very different pathway for me. But really, if I also look at it, the work that I did in helping nations identify their vision for where they wanted to go and work with communities and governments on really putting that into practice. My whole career over the last 35, 40 years has been about helping people activate their innate talents and wisdom and knowledge. And so really, I want to get you to think about wherever you are in the world right now, what is the conversation that needs to happen in this moment for you and for your clients? What is going to take them from like looking at trying to fix what's not working into a whole mindset shift of flourishing? And this is one of many fall calls that we're doing. We do these biweekly calls every 2 weeks, and that's why they are biweekly. I'm just trying to get my slides going, which might be an interesting thing today. So we've got some neat tech things happening. There we go. Our next call coming up, just to give you a heads up, and this will link in to our next call on the hot topic of neuroscience. Um, when we can really get people working with their brains and the way they are naturally wired, I think inevitably we are leaning into that appreciative, strengths-based focus. Also, coming up, we are going to be looking at writing. November is National Novel Writing Month, and we are going to continue that tradition in terms of holding the space for writers, whether you want to write your first book or whether you are a seasoned author like myself. It's valuable to just have a space to be getting into writing action. Our final hot topic of the year will be somatic approaches. And even in today's conversation, want to get you thinking about how are we helping people activate all their natural talents? Some of us are cognitive people. I have a big brain. Other family members are really practical with their hands. They're very, very good at what they do. And so very much we want to be also looking at our strengths, not only through the lens of what we say, but how we do it. So, with that in mind, a couple of related topics. You'll want to check out neuroscience in group and team coaching. It's episode number 35 here with Ivana. And Ivana, we've also had episode 36 just released. And remind me, that's on FlowFlex Scale, actually, my
Yes.
latest writing for solopreneurs. So, if you are a solopreneur, strengths are also critical to success. In order to flow, in order to scale, we need to hopefully lean into our strengths as much as possible. Anything you want to say about the Coaching Many podcast as my co-host, Ivana?
Just, I really appreciate the conversations we have because we really dance in the moment, but we're bringing tools, we're bringing practical resources, both our own at Potentials Realized, but also beyond that. So it really is about expanding our mindset, the conversation of what group and team coaching or what happens around the kitchen table can look like, the possibilities when we actually, you know, are present and using our coaching competencies. So it's delicious. I love being there with you.
It is delicious. And we did an episode, I think, on strengths earlier in season one. I might get Ivana to look that up, but today's sort of conversation here, I want to get you thinking about two things. One, what are strengths and why is it important right now? Two, what are some quick things you might consider integrating into your conversations? Because here at Potentials Realized, and more commonly we're known as Group Coaching Essentials. So you'll see two different websites. Potentials Realize is much more geared for our teams and the leaders we support. For if you're a coach, head on over to groupcoachingessentials.ca and you'll really see, this strengths-based language because strength, as Clifton and the Gallup organization defines it, it really is looking at how do we take our natural talent, those things that we're innately, uniquely valued by, and invest time into it. And that is what really creates a strength. So there is a practice component, there is a use component, because like anything, if we don't use it, we lose it, right? Skills, talents atrophy. And I think we've all been in roles where maybe in the employment situation, we weren't in our best fit. I'll just talk to my own experience, right? Some of my top five strengths are learner, and you see me do that every day in this work. That was a conscious pivot I made actually in 2002. Some of you heard me share this story, but I'd had a great career. Probably would have never left that career if I hadn't lost vision in one eye in 2003. But something happened in 2002 that really helped me, I think, with this massive career and life transition, as I really had to sort of re-identify and reinvent myself in my early 30s when I lost vision because I had a very dynamic career. I was helping countries rebuild post-disaster, whether it was natural disasters or other. Worked with teams that were typically across many, many countries. I traveled every week pretty consistently, sometimes 5 countries in a week, if you can imagine. And what I loved about that was it really activated some of my natural strengths, as I found out in that event, which must have been 2002, because my vision was good when I saw saw this presentation for the first time on strengths at an ASTD meeting. And I share this because you will see when you are lit up, right? We see it if we're coaches or leaders with our team members. Anything is possible. It is where energy and ease intersects. So my top five, no surprise, learner, as I said, but also strategic. And Ivana can attest to this. I am not great at dotting my T's or dotting my I's and crossing my T's. Really, I see the world in big, broad strokes. I have great capacity, which was recognized and appreciated in seeing patterns and seeing the connection points. And so we want to really be asking ourselves at all stages of our career, whether we're new, whether we're seasoned, when are we at our best? And what can we be doing to design more of that into our work? Back to 2002, I've sort of kept this open loop for a reason because I wanted you to think about why is she saying 2002? I was in a 5-day program with my entire team of colleagues at the time using Stephen Covey's 7 Habits model. And the 7 Habits facilitator asked us to write a vision of where we wanted our career to go. At that time, 2002, I was sort of 2 years into the sub-regional role with a global organization. I loved my work. I was constantly moving. My boss had also tapped me to do a lot of global facilitation work. She literally would call me on a Friday night and say, "Hey, Jen, we're sending you a plane ticket next week. In addition to what you normally do, we're going to have you facilitate a headquarters retreat to help them find their alignment." I loved it. I really, really loved it. And she knew that not only was I high in activator, not well, I am high in activator, as you can tell, but also high in maximizer. So I really am naturally always looking at situations, scenarios, teams to see how do we help people connect, just like this web, and how do we help them strengthen their natural capability or capacity at a collective level. And so I share that story because little did I know that in being asked by this Franklin Covey facilitator to create a vision where I put down in that vision, I would like to be doing more learning activities. I was a program manager. I was evaluating programs. I was facilitating government negotiations. I was writing proposals. I didn't get to spend as much time on the part that I have been able to do for the last 21 years of really zooming into how do we help people thrive? How do we help individuals thrive? How do we help groups come together and harness their collective wisdom? And how do we help teams really find their natural web that they can strengthen and lean into? And so for me, strengths are a natural language. I'm sure many of you listening in, you might also be Gallup Strengths certified or have done the Clifton Strengths. Maybe it's a tool you use. Certainly, it is an interesting area to be bringing into our conversations, whether it's a foundation, like some of you may use it, or for us here at Potentials Realized, we often include it as a sidebar unless the client is saying we do want to have this as our foundation. And it continuously asks the question, when are you at your best? And we can really look at that through multiple lenses. So I do want to get to some very practical things, but for those that are interested more in the theory of it and sort of the years and years of baseline, we've got to look to some really important psychologists. We've got Donald Clifton, strength psychology, Martin Seligman, positive psychology. I would also put in David Cooperrider and appreciative inquiry. Many of you that are in the coaching world have heard me talk for years about a really good book that came out in 2007 called Appreciative Coaching. And I have to say that I've used that appreciative coaching book for years, probably a decade, with teams. It takes this natural stance for our coaching clients to really look at how can they lean into the aspirational parts of their work. In today's world, I think Clifton has, well, certainly Gallup has done a lot of work with Clifton Strengths, but most importantly, in creating a really world-class Gallup Strengths certified coaching credential. And I went through that even after using strengths-based frameworks, using the Clifton Strengths, which was a former Strengths Finder, for like 18, almost 20 years. It was only last year that I decided I wanted to get a lot more deeply entrenched into the Clifton Strengths framework so that I could bring even more layers to my clients. We're not going to get into those layers today. We are going to still say stay at the surface, sort of at that foundational level, because it is important. And why do we find it important? It helps us move from deficits to potential. It helps us build engagement, energy, and excellence. And if you think about current state, where is engagement? At its lowest points ever. Where are people's energy? Maybe scattered, maybe anxious, maybe fearful. There's a lot of changes happening in the workspace right now. What I keep going back to is what the research shows us, which I'm just going to share, that really when we help people bring their best self to work every day, which is usually supported by a manager who is talking about strengths, helping people notice their strengths, then we really can have thriving teams. We can have entire thriving organizations. And I really do want to, sort of spotlight the brilliance of Donald Clifton, who said, what would happen if we studied what is right with people? And truly, this was the light bulb that went off for me in 2002, 10 years after graduating with a world-class undergrad from McGill in cognitive psych, to be able to ask the question in those days, what would happen actually if I wasn't thinking about psychology from this deficit lens of how do we modify people's behavior to what would happen if we could lean into vision and what's great in the world. And that was really in hand in the work that I was doing with the UN at the time. In fact, if you go back, you'll have seen me writing about strengths for many, many years. And in Coaching Business Builder and Plan, Do, Track, Section 2 is all about the solopreneur primer. This came out of work that I was doing intensively in 2012 with solopreneurs to help them identify what was the work that was moving the needle in their one-person business. 2012, we weren't talking a lot about solopreneurs. Today, in 2025, we are. AI is now allowing soloprenarial one-person show businesses growing not only into the multi-millions, but they anticipate that businesses will grow to $1 billion with one person in the wheel with AI. Now, how do we make that happen? I think it's what I talked about with strengths and flow. And that's why my next writing is going to be called Flow Flex Scale, because really we want to harness the best. If we are growing businesses that are lean and mean, activating technology, we do want to make sure that we're very clear on the human aspect of who are we and what are we great at. And so you'll hear me spend a lot more time talking about Flow Flex Scale. You can also go back to last hot topic. And I just want to really move us along because here's the science. A lot of our clients are curious. So why are you bringing this? Again, isn't this one of many things? Well, what I love about Gallup is that they are so research rich. And they have found through their years and decades of tracking why strengths-based work is so important that people become 6 times more engaged when they're able to focus in on their strengths. The people who have done strengths-based work are 3 times more likely to have an excellent quality of life. That's 3 times more likely. That's pretty significant. And I've been sharing this third stat for more than 15 years. Teams are found to be 12.5% more productive. So, practically, here at Potentials Realized, we have historically done probably once a month, once, maybe every 2 months, I do a team day with different teams. I've worked with all sorts of backgrounds, from transportation to government services, financial services to education. Um, you know, environmental management firms. Like it's just the list goes on and on and on. And what I love about being able to work with these organizations, whether it's a one off or whether it becomes the fabric of an ongoing coaching conversation with a team, is that people are so excited when they get to focus on where they're flourishing and not what is wrong with them. People really do open up just like this. So, we're going to go into some strengths coaching. And I thought it would be appropriate to share with you a journaling exercise that you can do on your own after today. So there's 3 levels of this journaling prompt. Number 1, at the end of this week, I want you to think about what is a strength that you have used this week. I want you to, Friday afternoon, set a timer, maybe set an alarm. And as you reflect on the week, think about what's one thing you did that really helped you move the needle. Along with that, second question, where can I apply it next? Where might you be able to use it next week? And third question is, what changed when I led from strengths? Maybe there's going to be an opportunity or a challenge that emerges this week. What would change or what did change when you led from strengths? So I hope that you're going to enjoy this quick journaling prompt. Again, the intent is not to replace a longer look at this, but my hope is that today's conversation is going to prompt you to pull out either your Strengths Finder or Clifton Strengths, because again, formerly known as Strengths Finder, now known as Clifton Strengths, so many millions of people have taken that. Pull out that top 5 report, see what it said about your top strengths. Or maybe you've done the positive psychology via values and action, character strengths. I have to say, with teams that I work with, we go one of the 2 routes. A lot of times it depends on the budget available. And so, as much as I've been talking about Clifton strengths, also want to spotlight the notion of there's a whole wonderful set of resources around this from positive psychology and the VIA Character Institute. I hope I have that name right. I don't have the book with me, but out of Cleveland, there's a whole great educational resource and research center known as the VIA Character Institute. And it really, regardless of framework, it is important for us to be looking at, this in a little bit more deeply way. So Liz is asking, what are the pros or cons of VIA versus Clifton strengths? And it's interesting, Liz, this is such a great question. I can only speak from the experience of, practical use over about 2 decades. Um, as I said, I've consistently sort of offered when people say we want to do strengths-based work, we then have a conversation. Do you want to do Clifton Strengths, which has been really deeply entrenched? There's always been, since like the early 2000s, of course, there's been the book, there's been the online assessment. I would say Gallup does an amazing view or amazing job on giving all of the videos. So once a person takes the assessment, they actually get a Gallup account, and Gallup feeds out short video lessons to them around their top five. If you activate a coach, then there's even more resources available to the coach, especially if you're doing work at an organization or team. So when I go into a team as a Gallup certified strengths coach, I have access to a pretty detailed portal of data on that team that I share with the team in terms of not only a team map, but heat maps and also other combinations that I just couldn't do by myself. Now, I will say in doing that, it is an investment, but like anything, if you see good value with the tool, as I said, I've been getting requests to use Clifton Strengths for more than 2 decades. I have done them consistently, and I sort of found that I had hit my own threshold on what I was able to bring to a team. Um, with becoming Gallup Strength certified, there is a whole back end portal of data and research that becomes so important in the springboard of the conversation for the team. Teams and organizations thrive when they have data, when they can see the data that is their own. And as a coach, we're talking about helping them create the story of themselves. So that is available and has been available for many years for by Clifton Strengths. On the flip side, though, there is a cost, right? There's a cost for that. And so many organizations, especially in the nonprofit world, in youth leadership, which is where I started my career 3 decades, 4 decades ago, I often find those nonprofits gravitate to VIA. And VIA has a couple of things working in its benefit. Now, both are globally validated, right? That for me is really important given that I work with clients all over the world. When I first took the VIA, I was working and living out of the Caribbean. And actually, because of my geolocation at the time, it assumed that I was from the Caribbean. It gave me a status of where I stood. And this is going back 20 plus years. So you don't see this anymore in the free report. But initially with VIA, it would give you sort of a demarcation. On a national or regional level, you were at the nth percentile. So one of my original strengths with VIA, which no longer fits in the top five, was bravery. That made a lot of sense, right? My work really was on the front line of change. And when I say on the front line of change, I'm not just saying sitting in an office. I was in the quote unquote trenches of rebuilding countries, of sitting down and standing shoulder to shoulder with technical experts who were rebuilding roads, who were rebuilding water systems, who were even rebuilding prisons and the morgues in countries. The things that I have seen required that I was courageous and brave every day. Now, I get the question a lot, do your strengths always stay the same? When you undergo significant life changes and career changes, as I did 20 plus years ago with the loss of vision in my eye, my top five, my top 10 changed dramatically. And so what I love about VIA is you can go back and take it for free at any time. And for many people around the world, economics matter. Cost matters. And so I started this business in 2004 with the mandate of bringing coaching to the masses. That was why I started Potentials Realized, to create a ripple effect, to bring coaching to many people. And so if I am working with emerging economies, with people who do not have access to funds for an assessment, a training program, we actually pivot to VIA. And what I love about what VIA has done through their Character Institute, I'll call it, and I don't think I have the right name on that, but they have continued to build resources. So for those that choose to do VIA Strengths, Dr. Ryan Nemiak, who is based out of Cleveland area, has put out in the last, just before the pandemic, he published a number of books that are really good. Like there's the VIA Strengths Character Guide. There's a resource, a series of resources that coaches can use to be coaching individuals, groups and teams on different strength profiles, right? Because strengths become a lens on how we see the world. And that's why rather than trying to dive into a whole toolkit today of strengths-based exercises, I thought a really good starting point that any of us can start with is this journal prompt, right? There's no cost to it. It's going to activate some insight any which way. But I hope, Liz, that that sort of spells out a couple of different options with the VIA and also Clifton Strengths. So again, invite everyone to do. Yep, and Liz has got to leave, so I'm glad that you were with us, Liz. But I think for most people, it really is about what makes sense for your clients. So with that, we're going to just take another minute. The idea, as we have been looking at today, it is a bit of a shift in some organizational systems. It's from fixing to flourishing, fixing where the focus is on what's broken, flourishing to amplify what's strong. And it really is that shift as we see here at Potentials Realize in sort of being a top-down control to being a bottom-up activation of curiosity and capacity. So I hope that out of today's call, you're seeing some possibilities moving from more of a deficit, we've got to fix it, to how can I harness the best in the people that I work with? And I will say one final thing that is really important to keep in mind. Working from strengths does not mean that that's all we focus on. Working from strengths, though, is really about how can we find more margin in our day to lead naturally from what we are gifted in. We're going to do the work better. We're going to actually do it more effectively, more efficiently, and faster. And so, even in our languaging, we can really reframe our conversations. Instead of saying what's wrong or what's broken, what's working well? That's a pretty significant shift. Instead of what went wrong, where or what has worked well this week, where have we succeeded? Who's at fault to who can collaborate around this? And what needs to control to what can grow naturally. So I want to leave you with a final exercise that is a choice point for you. You may want to do a bit of a flourishing vision for yourself, your organization, or your team. Think about what's energizing you right now, how you can expand on what's already strong, and maybe the question of what does success look like when we're thriving. These are all doorways into creating a vision that is not necessarily anchored in fixing what's wrong, but activating what might be possible. And with that, I think that's it for today. So, Ivana, what are you taking away? Because here's the main sort of through line. Coaching expands capacity, as I'm going to share. And some of you may have started hearing me speak on my new work of coaching and change. I'm going to be speaking tomorrow in the Gulf Coast in Florida, virtually. And I'm going to be talking about how coaching really helps us activate connection, culture, creativity, and collaboration. And at its core is this notion that we want to focus in on strengths-based work. We want to help people do work that's easier and more natural, especially when things are changing rapidly and contexts are tight. So, what is your takeaway, Ivana, from today? And we've got you on mute. Get you to unmute.
Yeah. So thanks to this call, I just decided to pull out my strengths again and review before coming on to the call. And for me, it's really that
Mm,
reframe of how we, like, I wrote it down, like, what would happen if we studied what is right with people? So I'm thinking about that for myself, but also how I bring that into my coaching conversations, like through my powerful questions. How do I integrate people's strengths in the conversation of where they are and helping them move forward?
yeah.
So it's very activating. Thank you. And
And
thanks
I
for
think a
sharing
lot of
that
people
comparison.
always say that, right? It's activating. It's like, ooh, this gets me excited, or I'm curious to explore this. And that's a different energy than like, I'm trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So again,
And that
even
is
in
the
that,
flourishing. That is the
flourishing versus
flourishing.
fixing. I'm trying to figure it out versus, I'm intrigued. I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to actually take a micro step in
Yeah.
doing something. And so, again, I think to moving the needle in times of change, whatever we could be doing to activate energy that is natural to us is going to move us
Yes.
further than trying to like fit in a box that really isn't our box to fit in. So,
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we are
Absolutely.
back in a few weeks. Do you remember? Oh, neuroscience is our next call in 2 weeks.
28. Yep,
28.
28
And
on
that's going to lead
neuroscience.
into our kickoff of the last advanced course of the year. So, two things if you're listening to this point, we've got group coaching essentials starting the last Friday of October on Halloween Day, 31st of October. We also have NELA, which is neuroscience, learning, and experiential approaches. It is the final of the 70-hour pathway to the ACTC. And so hope that you will take a few minutes to look at that. Any final words from you, Ivana, before we wrap up?
Even, yeah, even for those who are curious about neuroscience, we just released an episode on neuroscience on the podcast. So go check that out just to kind of get some get some satiation going,
Yeah.
to get some taste.
Get some
Yeah.
percolation happening. And even in today, I incorporated a little bit about the strengths as well. So, with that, I've got to run. I've got to go do a drop off, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. So, have a good one. Take care.
Bye.
Be
Thank
well.
you.